Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of the biggest stars and some of my favourite people. And we've got one for you today. Jennie Bond is the royal family. Let's face it, she's reported on them for decades, but not quite as long as Her Majesty has been married. 70 years is a long time to be married. And in that period, things have changed. And she's on to talk to us about that today. Jennie, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's so lovely to talk to you again. I mean, 70 years is sort of an incomprehensible amount of time in my mind, and so much has changed. I mean, society's changed, the internet's changed the world, terrorism, we've got Trump, we've got all this stuff, and through all of that, they've had each other, haven't they?
They have, yes. I think quite a lot of people will be pushed to name what a 70 years of marriage is. It's the platinum wedding anniversary. And the Queen and Duke have achieved this remarkable landmark. And a lot has changed in those 7 decades. Our attitude to marriage has changed. And the London Mint Office has issued a commemorative coin, a free coin, for this occasion. And to go with the coin, they surveyed 2,000 people to find out, what do we think about marriage now? And all sorts of things have changed. Who pays the bill? Thankfully, it's not always the bride's parents now. Whether the men feel that they need to ask for a hand in marriage, and most people really don't now. That's perhaps not quite so surprising. I like the fact that 1 in 10 young men, are now prepared to take on their wife's surname, which is very interesting finding, I think. So things are all changing. The Duke of Edinburgh was quite peeved when he was told that his family name, Mountbatten, was not to go forward as the name that his children would bear. They would be Windsors, not Mountbattens. And it was a very sore point for very many years, actually.
I suppose the most depressing thing about marriage is the statistics that they don't last, certainly 70 years, possibly 7 years, even 7 months is stretching it these days. We've sort of got a different ethic, which they sort of had, didn't they? That you're together through good, through bad, through worse, and through the happy times too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, particularly for a royal marriage, and particularly after the abdication crisis, which was provoked by the fact that Edward VIII wanted to marry a twice divorced woman, Wallis Simpson. So divorce was anathema, a word that shouldn't be uttered. But of course, that has changed. But as part of what I've been doing lately is the London Mint Office arranged for me to interview 4 couples who'd also been married for 70 years. And they all said that they felt that young people today don't stick at it, really, and that what you've got to do is, take the good with the bad. And the survey shows that top of the list of ingredients for a successful marriage is respect. Mutual respect, and I think that's so important, and a sense of humour. Gosh, that goes a long way, doesn't it?
What about boredom, though, Jennie? This is my problem. I look at somebody and I go for dinner, and then we have a lovely time, and then the second dinner I'm slightly less interested. And then within about 3 weeks, I think, oh, God, let's try someone else. It's hard, isn't it, to find somebody who's interesting enough to keep you occupied for 7 years, let alone 70?
Well, I don't know. I've done 45 years.
Congratulations.
45 years, and I still find my husband very interesting, very intellectual, always learning. So, you've got to maybe try a little bit harder.
So what's the art of that, though? Is that about you being more giving and being more interested, or about them being interesting in the first place?
I think both, but primarily the latter. I mean, I think you've got to keep yourself stimulated. But I always say stimulated and stimulating, because if you take on change and challenge, and for example, my husband, he's learning Spanish. That keeps his mind very occupied. And I think if you keep yourself interesting, you are a more interesting person. And he also reads a huge amount and tells me all about his books. And I think we could all actually take a lesson from trying to listen to one another and putting down, I'm so guilty of this, putting down your phone, putting down your tablet, and actually having a cup of coffee and listening to each other instead of pretending to listen, having 7 different conversations on social media at the same time.
Yeah, it's that being present, isn't it? That's the key. But then, of course, I mean, you're delicious. I'm a deeply unattractive man. But what stops you being tempted by someone else? That's the big question, isn't it? Because there's temptation now on every corner. And, of course, on these phones, there's apps for everything. I mean, ugly, fat gingers like me could even, get a portion if we want it, Jennie.
Well, the survey actually sort of took a look at the idea of fidelity, and only a third of those questioned thought that monogamy was the secret of a long-lasting marriage. So it wasn't rated as highly as you might expect. Personally, I think fidelity is much, much more important than that. But maybe that is something that has changed over these years.
It's certainly sort of been, the millennials have got a different way of viewing everything, haven't they? I mean, how many couples do you think there will be in future decades that last 70 years? It does seem like it's a thing of the past, as depressing as that might be.
Well, I don't know. You've obviously got to get married quite young to do 70 years, and that is not the case, is it, so much these days? Because I think we all think too deeply about it. You know, are we at the right point in our career? How are our finances? You know, plan for the big day. And so people are getting married a little bit later. So yes, I think platinum wedding anniversaries are going to be increasingly rare. I
don't know how you feel about them. For me, Her Majesty and Prince Philip are so to be admired. I mean, what they've been through, what they've had to put up with, the sacrifices they've made and what they've given to us. I mean, you can't have anything but respect, surely.
No, I think whatever you think about the institution of monarchy, I mean, everyone, I think, would acknowledge that the Queen and the Duke have performed sterling service to the country. They really have. Being an ambassador and a diplomat for this country, flying the flag around the world, meeting hundreds and thousands of people who you'll never meet again, and you have to make polite conversation with, and being scrutinised every move, every action, every word, every gesture, living in a goldfish bowl. It's a tough gig, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And then I wonder, do you ever get bored? I mean, it seems to be a fun time now to be a royal correspondent. When we look at what's going on, it's all relatively positive, isn't it? It's about new babies, it's about William, Kate, and of course Harry being the ultimate charmer.
Yes, I mean, I think that's why we see the Queen very relaxed in the last sort of decade, really. She is sailing in so much calmer waters. When I was the BBC's correspondent, it was turbulence all the way. And we actually were talking about whether the institution of the monarchy could survive the various crises that came at us, like tidal waves. But now she sees the dynasty continuing. She sees, unusually, that there's herself there. She has her heir, Prince Charles. There is William, hale and hearty, and beyond that, George. So 4 generations of monarchs, all alive and well.
And she looks so fit and well. I wonder how Prince Philip's doing. Do you hear anything on the inside? We had a sort of worrying Christmas, didn't we, last year when he was in and out of hospital?
Yes, he is, prone to infection now and again, but he is 96. I saw him not that long ago, actually, at the palace, and he looked pretty good. He wears a hearing aid. He's a little stooped, I thought, little. But I told him, I said, I'm glad to see you looking so well, sir. And he looked me up and down and had a bit of a twinkle in his eyes, and he said, well, you're not looking so bad yourself, you know.
Does it ever become normal when the most important people in our country know who you are? That's strange, isn't it?
Well, I don't think, I never pretend to be best buddies, but I mean, after I've knocked around their family for an awful lot of years, so I guess they know who I am. But, you never have deep, meaningful conversations with the senior royals because journalists are not their favourite brand of human being.
Jennie Bond, you're a class act. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.